Just to sort of start off with, I mean, one of the things that definitely comes across when you watch, the French and Saunders shows and so forth, is your kind of gift of impersonating people and mimicking people, and facially, and kind of getting into everything, all the characteristics and so forth. Is that something that you were sort of doing as a child? Did you kind of used to mimic people at school and stuff, or was that?
Yeah, no, I started. I grew up in a family where you sort of. It wasn't required, but it was nice if you could be entertaining while you were having your tea, And my father was very funny, and we wanted to make him laugh normally. So I would imitate my teachers from school. And I suppose so you get used to sort of hearing voices and hearing what makes people laugh. And so when me and Dawn started, well, actually, when we first started, we didn't do impersonations at all. We just did characters. And the impersonations came mainly along with the makeup department.
I mean, there were obviously some great prosthetics, but nevertheless, you
Yeah.
still absolutely got to those characters. I mean, like Jodie Foster, for example. I mean, that's so much more.
Yeah, well, she's a gift. She's a gift if you've got a pointy nose, I mean, and anyone that exaggerates the way they talk, she's got a shush that she talks with, the sort of, kind of shush, shush. So that was an easy one. Easy. We don't pick difficult ones, let's point it out, We pick ones we know we can do, so it's not a challenge.
Has that ever kind of backfired in terms of ever been people who you have?
I did try Celine Dion and it was hideous. I think we'll all, I haven't got that clip, have you? No, let's hope not. It was bad.
Or have there been occasions where people have actually kind of come to you and said, I saw your take of me and I wasn't very happy?
Yes. And they sort of missed the point, which is, of course, it's an honour. I don't know who started that, that saying, of course it's an honour. It's a privilege to be impersonated and taken the piss out of. But, yeah, there have been certain people, when I'm not like that, I don't do that. And you go, you do. You do.
Is it too much to try and push you for names on that? Are they
I won't give
and
names, no,
breathing?
because I've learnt that lesson as well. That just because it will get a laugh on the night, but you really don't want it out there. And nowadays everything's out there. This will be out there tomorrow.
Yeah, that's true.
So
Be out there now, probably. There's somebody there somewhere.
Nothing is
under
just
the
in your
seat.
own front room anymore.
That is absolutely true.
Yeah.
And in terms of just when you were growing up, I know that you kind of moved around a bit, but did you go out? Did you go out to the cinema? Did you
do as a kid, just to move about, run here, run there, move about.
Sometimes you were living abroad, and sometimes you were living in the UK.
Yes, we did move to lots of places.
Did you go to the cinema a lot in terms of? Did you have many kind of comic influences, film-wise or TV-wise, alternatively?
Well, because we lived on RAF camps, a lot of the time there would be a little cinema on the RAF camp, and there'd be Saturday morning. You could generally get a Norman Wisdom. Not one of my influences, I have to say. In fact, I can actually say, because is he dead?
Yeah.
Okay.
Very dead.
I really didn't like Norman Wisdom.
I should say he's not in our Comedy Genius.
I think Norman Wisdom and Jerry Lewis were my two least favourite comics, because they seem to be slightly creepy and slightly aggressive, but I think Mr. Pastry. Does anyone remember Mr. Pastry? Please say you do, because I used to say to people, "Did you love Mr. Pastry?" And they go, "We've never heard of Mr. Pastry."
Are people humouring Jennifer? Or have they really heard of Mr. Pastry?
No, of course they've heard of Mr. Pastry.
Oh yeah, okay, got some waves. Okay,
He
people
was
have.
fantastic, and he was definitely probably my prime when I was little, my prime comic influence, with Laurel and Hardy and people like that.
Okay, and I mean Laurel and Hardy, of course. About to have a big moment because they've got their new film coming up, and we're doing
It's
a big
not their film, it's someone else's.
That's
isn't
true.
it?
But we're going to show
Someone else
a
has
lot
made
of their
them.
stuff here in January.
Yeah.
I'll give them a little plug for the fact in
Yes.
January,
Oh,
Lauren
yeah,
Hardy will be
brilliant.
playing lots of.
Fantastic.
And at one point you could have ended up either in kind of archaeology or you did sort of start in teaching. I mean, comedy was
I
not
could
your
never have
natural...
ended up in archaeology because I was deluded. I was deluded into thinking that I would get in anywhere to do anything, to be honest.
But you made it as far as teaching.
Oh, that's quite an ambition for some people, actually. And it is, yes. I got a teaching degree in drama eventually, and never got a job, unfortunately. But Dawn did, which was always the bane of our lives. Dawn became a teacher and I didn't, but somehow we managed to sort of do comedy in the evenings.
And you are clearly like best friends. You've worked together throughout your entire careers, on and off. But when you first met, you've described it as indifference, perhaps. There wasn't that kind of spark or chemistry that we kind of see with you now when you first met.
No, not at all. I was sort of... She thought I was a posh girl. I thought she was a bit bossy. As she wore a fawn cord skirt and a baseball cap on the wrong way. And I thought, she doesn't look like my kind of girl. And I think I always had a little scarf knotted just here. And my school uniform, probably, I don't know. But it was, we weren't the perfect match at first, yeah.
But you took the plunge when it came to actually answering the ad on the stage that led on to, like, getting to comic strip and so forth. I mean, that was you that was, you made that first move.
I was unemployed, so I needed something. And Dawn and I had made a kind of go of the cabaret at college and had fun doing it, just had great fun doing it. And I thought, well, they were advertising in the stage, which for some reason my flatmate and I always got on the hope there'd be a job on a cruise. Because we'd heard of someone who'd got a job on a cruise. And that seemed like the perfect thing because you were actually on that cruise, but they were paying you. It seemed like the perfect thing. But I didn't find a job on a cruise. I found an advert that said acts wanted for a club in Soho. And so I said we should go and audition, and we did.
And you talk about the club in Soho. You actually were auditioning in the Raymond Review Bar at one point, weren't you?
Yes. The club, the comic strip club, which Peter Richardson had got together, was a theatre that wasn't being used for stripping in the Raymond's Review Bar. And
your stage act at that point, that was called the Menopause Sisters.
No, we didn't have a name. The Menopause Sisters. And this was, but we called ourselves the Menopause Sisters at college.
Oh, okay.
But we had no idea what the menopause was. We probably wouldn't have had we known. I think we thought it was something to do with menstruation. And that was a sort of, a word at the time, like, oh, don't mention your periods. And so we thought, oh, let's mention periods. Let's call ourselves the Menopause Sisters.
Then you were the Menopatsy Sisters.
The Menopatsy Sisters was a circus act. Doesn't seem possible that we're here now, does it? I mean, it was so random. But those were the days when you didn't give a shit and you could get up on stage and do whatever you wanted because maybe there was only 10 people, maybe there was 20, and you would never see those people again in your whole life. So it didn't matter.
And I think it's fair enough to say that at that point, the number of female performers in comedy, especially in live comedy, was really, really small, wasn't it?
Yes, and we managed to keep it that way. Which is sad, but true.
And so the people at the comic strip who you ended up sort of working with, who were also performing there, obviously Adrian and Rick, they were the Dangerous Brothers or the 20th Century Coyote?
Yeah, both.
And Peter Richardson, obviously, who was the figure behind the comic strip, and with Nigel Planer.
Yeah.
And Arnold Brown and various other people.
Lexi, Sale.
And what's interesting at that point, so this is the point where everybody sort of talks about sort of alternative comedy in the 80s, don't they? And they're sort of the anti kind of Jim Davidson, Bernard Manning kind of comedy. And there was a lot of anger around coming through in kind of music and so forth. But I think you described yours and Dawn's as not really being kind of about anger, really.
No, we weren't very angry. We agreed with the whole ethos of it, but we just did the same act we were doing at college, really, which was laughing at the word muesli and beanbags and anything that we thought was sort of hippie-ish in the 80s. And the saddest thing was that because we were then employed to do it like 3 times a week in the evenings, we thought we had to change the act every night. And so by the end of the week, there was almost nothing to say. It was pathetic, actually.
Are there certain nights that you kind of migrate to as you get better? In terms of, everybody wants Friday and Saturday, and if you get Wednesday, then is that how it kind of works?
No, I think it was only on those nights. We would do any night going. It was where you were in the billing, so it was to get into the second half was always the ambition.
And these were paid gigs at this point?
Yeah, bus fare, I would say, just about.
And I touched on the fact that obviously in terms of live performances, it was a very male-orientated industry. And if you went to the Comedy Store, I mean that was quite. It's quite an aggressive vibe sometimes, isn't it?
That was. And we were lucky in that we started the comic strip because they were our friends, so we could go there with a gang of boys who sort of made it okay for us. Otherwise, it was really aggressive. And
what kind of respect?
Well, I mean, because it was a load of stag parties, and people would shout, "Get your tits out!" and Dawn was very good at that because she was not getting her tits out. Stop it. I would just go, "Oh, Dawn, why don't we just give up and go home? Let's get out of here." But she would actually stop and say, "Who said that?" Because she was a trained teacher, and she'd literally go, "Now, stop, lights up, please. Who said that?" And there was one night where the lights went up and there was a load of boys sitting around a table. Actually, they were men. And one of them went, like that. It turns out they were the river police on a stag night. And were very quiet after that. In fact, the whole audience was very quiet, and so we did our act to silence and then and then left. But no, we didn't relish the Comedy Store because it was very competitive, very competitive.
Now, we're going to show the first clip.
Oh.
And this is one I know you're going to be looking forward to seeing because it's you very, very early on. It might be one of the very first TV performances you did.
Oh.
I think we'll just play it. We'll let it speak for itself.
That was before people had remote controls, I think.
So it wasn't the greatest quality clip.
No, but I could see the camel toe.
Yeah.
Worst pair of trousers. Anyway, thank you for that. Yes, that was.
That's like the clip of Boyzone that they have right at the very start when they're on the Irish talk show and everybody just plays it. I mean, that's a bit like one, but it is funny, isn't it? I mean, do you think it's funny when you look at it?
Well, the act didn't change much after that. It has to be said, didn't it? I mean, that was the sort of the germ of the idea, the sort of the act, the French and Saunders act, yeah.
And the Comic Strip Presents was the first sort of the big kind of break in terms of it was the opening night show on Channel 4. Peter Richardson, I mean, I think it had the club closed by the time that came round.
Yeah.
And the very first one you did was Five Go Mad in Dorset. And it sort of established the little sort of team. Obviously, it was you and Dawn again. Adrian's in there. And a whole lot of other kind of sort of supporting cast. And you all kind of changed, like Robbie Coltrane. And I mean, in terms of the way that they kind of came together, I mean, obviously Peter was quite a big figure in a sense. Was he very kind of controlling in the way that he kind of looked after those, or was it a very kind of...
Yes, but I suppose he had to be, really, because we wouldn't have got there without him. I mean, you're going to have to... Actually, my memory's so bad. Had the young ones been out by then? Yeah. Had it?
I think the young ones were 80...
I think... Had the young ones happened by then? Does anybody have a memory at all? Anything that happened at all?
Where's Dick Fiddy?
I think the young ones happened. They had, okay. Yeah. So some of the boys had their big break. But this was definitely Peter's deal with Channel 4. And he decided, who was going to write them, direct them and everything. And we were happily just along for the ride and along to learn how to do it, really.
And were they a sort of a form of education in a sense? Because each one was like a little film in its own right, wasn't it? And you did Supergrass, obviously, as well. But was that quite a sort of a learning experience for you? Or did
well, they were all made on film, and they were all made like films. Probably cheaper just because we got paid what beginners get paid, and we all slept in bunk beds in small cottages and had the time of our lives, really. And no one cared if you filmed till midnight and then got up at 2 o'clock in the morning to do some more. And it was a great learning thing for us, yeah. Because when you're young, you can do that kind of thing. When you're old, you think, Oh, God, get up again, come on.
And when it came to things like writing the scripts and directing and those sort of things, did you all kind of put your hat in, in the ring? Or, I mean, how did it work in terms of choosing who
I
to do
don't
what?
remember, actually. I think, I remember how they were sort of dealt out, but I remember I don't think Dawn and I did anything, did we write anything in the first series?
No, I don't
Probably
think so.
not, no. I don't think we had any clue how to do it then. And once we'd done the second series, we thought, oh no, we'll do one now.
And you're kind of, being very kind of self-deprecating as we're kind of talking about sort of, your role. But was there a
I
point?
have no memory, I'm so sorry. I'm sort of making it up.
But was there a point where you actually sort of suddenly thought, actually, no, we really have made it now. We've done, this is it.
No, I don't think so. I don't think there is a point like that, because there's always everything you do, you then have to, if you want to do it again, it becomes harder, or there's more pressure. So I don't think so. And also because we were a group of friends, it was like doing something that was within the family, and we just had the best time, generally in Devon, making those films. And I don't know if we ever watched them go out. The fun was doing it.
Poor Timmy.
Oh, poor Timmy. But that was all Peter, the famous five. That was his sort of childhood dream to do that.
And is it true that there were kind of real Blighton fans who really knocked you for that and were very upset by...
Probably. Yeah. We didn't have social media. Who cares?
That's true. That's true. And obviously, when you have very funny people working around you and there is a script, was Peter quite good about allowing people to kind of ad-lib and bring things to the table, or was it pretty much because of the sort of time constraints and money, so it had to be done that way?
Oh, I think you could always suggest things. I mean, but of course it was done on quite a good budget, but quite a tight budget, and it was all on film. So it was pretty well organised, I have to say. Not a lot of improv.
And I mean, and it went on for many years, and then it's come back in various forms. And you played a fantastic Margaret Thatcher.
Well, Pete has this knack of writing very strange little films, and I love them. And he has a great knack of finding extraordinary actors and characters. Not always actors either, just people that he's seen and thought look weird enough to be in a film. And it was very much his thing, the comic strip.
And at the point when this was made, chronologically, I'm sure we're going to kind of get a bit mixed up, but when there's a reference from Adrian saying you're going to make quite a good little wife.
No, we weren't going out.
So that all came later on.
Yeah, it never occurred to me that meant anything.
And another show that you made around this time was Girls on Top.
Yay!
Fairly muted cheer from three people in the audience who remember it. But that was, in terms of the cast as well. I mean, obviously.
Well, that show probably got the biggest audience we've ever played to, because it was ITV. And you used to get, millions of people watched TV in those days. And that, again, that was a chance meeting with Ruby Wax and me and Dawn. And I think we had the same literary agent. And she said, oh, you guys should write a show together. And in those days, it was that easy. You could write a show and get it on.
So you didn't know Ruby already at that point?
We didn't. No, we met her at a party and liked her and started writing with her.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
And were you involved in the casting of it as well?
If we'd known her, we wouldn't have started.
You've never been able to shake us head. And did you know the other? Did you know Tracy Ullman and?
Dawn knew Tracy because she'd done Three of a Kind with Lenny, and we hadn't. Joan Greenwood was just a piece of luck, really, because we never imagined we'd get someone that stellar, and she was fantastic.
How was she to work with?
Amazing, so generous. A wonderful person. And we could get her to do the weirdest things. We had to sometimes strap her up in sort of sexual harnesses and things and gags. And she just went, it's marvellous, I love it, I absolutely love it. Marvellous, yes. What is it? Oh, marvellous, yes. And she was a dream.
And that ran for a couple of series. Is that a show that could have gone on, do you think?
How many series was it? Two?
It was two, yeah.
2 series. I don't know if it could have gone on. I have no idea about these things.
And you talk about sort of working for ITV at that point. This is probably around the sort of time, maybe a few years earlier, where BBC and ITV used to really kind of quite hotly kind of try and sort of poach each other's stars and stuff, didn't they? And obviously you started on Channel 4, ITV was Girls on Top, but once you were kind of established at the BBC, were you then firmly in the grips of the BBC, so to
Yeah,
speak.
I wouldn't. I mean, working for the BBC was the best thing ever. I mean, because it was where all your heroes had worked, and the whole building was so creative, and it was just a fantastic place to work in. And also, if you work for ITV, it's a weird thing, but you have to cope with the adverts. And if you're writing comedy, you're literally writing 2 quite short acts, whereas at the BBC, you can actually write a 30-minute comedy, and it does make a big difference.
And I mean, you touched on the fact then about the whole commissioning process and the fact that you could just meet somebody and that you'd go off and write something. I mean, that's
Well, I'm saying
changed
that.
so
My
much,
agency, I should probably go, God, bloody hell, if it was only that easy, love.
but in reality, to get a show made now, I mean, it seems to be a very different process, certainly.
Yes, I mean, I think so. I think it's a lot harder, and there's a lot more hoops to jump through. People don't read a script and go, oh, that looks great, off you go. I think it's, money's much tighter.
And in the show, there's a show Happy Families, which I remember incredibly fondly,
Yes.
and I don't think it's been oft repeated, if at all. Which, and I don't know if you know why that is.
I think most things that aren't repeated, and I had this conversation the other day, is because they're too expensive, because the deals that were done at the time
Right.
mean that everyone has to be on a full fee again to get them on, and that would be too expensive.
But this was a Ben Elton show with you, Dawn, Adrian,
I
Stephen
did play 10
Fry.
characters, so I'd probably be on a lot of money.
Well, that's the thing, I mean, so did Ben approach you about this up front, or how did that work in terms of playing all the characters? It's always a thing, isn't it? It's such a long time ago.
I suppose he. I mean, Ben was very young then. I mean, he hadn't sort of made his name yet, and he wrote this script that the BBC. I'm saying
Yep,
that. Yep.
BBC.
The BBC loved, and we all knew each other because he'd been at the comic strip. He'd been at university with Aidan Rick, and he'd also worked with Stephen and Hugh Laurie and Stephen Fry. So he just cast it as he wanted to, and I was lucky that I got the lead.
And it's such a shame it hasn't been shown because, as you say, you play this kind of the grandmother of the family with Adrian Edmondson playing your grandson, and then you play each of the granddaughters over successive episodes before they all kind of meet together at the end. And we're going to play a little clip from...
That's a great cast in it.
It's an amazing cast. All those granddaughters.
No, but Dawn's in it, Helen Leder is in
is
it, I
fantastic in
mean,
it.
Harriet Thorpe's in it. It's the whole gang.
Let's prosthetics. I mean, we see those prosthetics there, but prosthetics have played quite a big role in the sort of French and Saunders world. Thinking about like sort of, the big old men and the sort of stuff and nonsense women and all of those. I mean, when you're writing these characters, have you kind of quite envisaged quite how much agony you're going to have to go through to kind of make them work?
No, because what happens is you write the characters, you imagine them, and then you give them to a makeup artist and a costume designer who go mad. And say, right, you'll have to come in at 4 o'clock in the morning. We've got everything set. And it's really, really good fun. The first time you see yourself, and it takes hours and hours to get this stuff on and glued on, especially in those days, because it was quite new. And all through the day, I remember all this stuff would stop popping out and sort of peeling off. And my makeup artist used to get a hypodermic needle filled with glue that she would then push under the fake skin and squeeze out the glue and then tap it all back into place. But it was a kind of hell prosthetics. It's great. Once you've got it on, you don't want to ever take it off again because it's such hell to get off.
Early Botox.
Yes, well, it's like a chemical peel. It's like, oh, horrible stuff.
And as you kind of moved on, and obviously, we'll talk about French and Saunders a bit more in a minute, but there were various budgets available to you. But would that affect your writing in terms of, well, this is one where the two of us could just be ourselves, no particular kind of, large amounts of makeup or anything needed?
We'd normally know vaguely what the budgets were before when you did a series, because each half hour would be set, and you'd be told, well, you can go a bit mad here and you can spend a bit more here. You'd know how many days filming you got, which was the expensive stuff, how much pre-record you got, so you could pre-record stuff that needed prosthetics, and, you'd have a studio. So everything was sort of set, and within that framework, you'd work out what you could do, and if you couldn't do it, you'd do something else. You'd be said, oh no, that's too expensive, we can only do 2 prosthetics or whatever.
For no other reason than I just particularly love Happy Families, and it's not available. We're going to play another clip.
Oh my God.
So we just started to touch on a little bit on the actual show, French and Saunders itself. And can you remember about when that kind of commission came through and how it worked with sort of the BBC? I mean, you're probably going to say no because it's so long ago. But
no, I do. I mean, I've told this story, but literally, we went into the BBC and Jim Moyer, who was the Commissioner of Light Entertainment then, and light entertainment, I have to point out, is different to comedy. In light entertainment, you have to have a singer. So when we had our show commissioned, they said every week you've got to have a song. And I think it was the same for the young ones. I've got a feeling the young ones was light entertainment, which is why there was always a band. So we had to have a song. So Alison Moyer, Joan Armatrading, Kirsty McCall, they were in every week because it was a requirement. But Dawn and I went in to meet the commissioner, and he'd heard about us and thought, well, someone's told me you're funny girls. Let's see. I'm going to put my dick on the table. And
a charmer.
Yes, well, he was a charmer, actually. But he did say, I'm going to put my dick on the table and give you a series. Don't let me down. And that was the last we saw of him then, because he just kept out of the way. We had a series. After the first series, he said, that didn't go too badly. Do you want to change anything? We said yes. He said, off you go then, and gave us another one.
So did they match you up with a kind of producer and a director, and off you go?
We had a great producer, John Plowman.
The great John
Plowman, who's produced all our stuff. And we met John Plowman quite early on in Granada TV days. And he was a great supporter and a great producer. So he did all the hard work.
I mean, there are obviously several important relationships in your career that have lasted throughout. One is John Plowman, as you say, who is a kind of comedy legend in the sort of producing terms.
Yeah.
There's also Maureen, your agent, who
yes.
nice. I mean, she's been with you throughout as well, hasn't she?
Yes, she has.
At what point
she's
did
even come this evening, and she didn't have to.
At what point did you meet Maureen?
It must have been about 82, Maureen, 1982, something like that. Yes, 1982. And she's been an agent for me and Dawn ever since. She's responsible for the length of our career, I think, really.
And in terms of this show then, so you said you've got the commission, there's a producer and a director assigned and so forth, and you literally have a blank piece of paper.
Yes, always. No computers in those days, so literally pencil and paper.
And how did you work? Did you sort of act things out in front of each other, or
well,
did you
we'd
go
never written anything down before, which was weird because Dawn and I always improvised our stuff, and we knew it off by heart. So we'd been doing the acts in the clubs and had our own little shows in theatres and things, but we'd never, I don't think, ever written anything down for anyone. So this was really hard because people go, well, we need a script. And you go, well, it sort of goes like this. And they go, no, you have to write it down for us. So we found it incredibly difficult to do that.
Yeah, because the cameramen, they all need to know their angles. They all have to have something
yes,
to
and
work for.
bought a typewriter and started typing, and we typed them out, and always with the little note saying, this will be funnier. And I still do that, which is so sad. This will have jokes in it, by the way.
And in that first series, that's the one where you had Betty Marsden there, wasn't it, with the hot hoofers?
Yes, we had a great concept for the first series. We thought it should be as if it was a terrible sort of end of the pier show. And the audience were featured, and we had the hot hoofers, our dancers, and we were hosting the show badly. I mean, I enjoyed it, and it had a lot of slapstick in it. But we suddenly realised it didn't have enough sketches in it. It was all sort of backstage stuff and the story, and we wanted to take over more. So we completely reformatted it for Series 2.
And you had the incredible raw sex as well.
We had the incredible raw sex, and they stayed with us, yes, for the duration.
And did you know both of them already?
Yes, they worked at the comic strip. They were the house band at the comic strip. And we then used to use them in our theatre shows, and then they came onto the TV, which was quite hard work because they were quite dirty. and sometimes drunk, and so it was quite hard work.
And the actual appearances by the singers you were talking about, your kind of essential singing moment, were actually really great names and really, I mean, were they people you knew already, or were they people?
We did know them, yes, because in those days when we were young, we were quite hip, and we kind of hung out in the right places and met people who were singers, and they agreed to do it. So yes, it was people we knew. Lulu, obviously. And towards the end, only Lulu. Everyone else got wise.
And is it true that you actually did shoot Lulu?
We did shoot Lulu.
But
yes,
really shot
actually
Lulu.
did shoot her. Well, we didn't actually shoot her, but she was injured rather badly. She was injured terribly badly, actually. We were doing a Pulp Fiction piss take in the White Room, and Dawn and I both had machine guns, and we were guarding Lulu, obviously, as you do. And she kept wanting to sing Shout, as she does. And she kept threatening to sing Shout. And the joke was that as she started to sing Shout, we would machine gun her, like, and there would be blood, and she was loaded up with all these little charges that were sort of on her skin that would blow the blood out. So as she was singing Shout, all this blood would go everywhere and she would die. And she was told, don't hold your arms close to your side when they're machine gunning you, because the charges will blow inwards instead of outwards. And there was only one take, obviously, because of all the blood. And so she starts singing, well, and we go, and she holds her arms like that, bang, into her side. And the charges, especially in one of her arms, went inwards, so it imploded, and it blew a disc of skin out about that. I know! Lulu! And it literally in her arm, and it was like the size of an old 2p coin, about here. And she went, ow, ow. And we went, what, are you all right? And of course, she's covered in blood. So no one can tell where this wound is on Lulu until we look and we go, oh my God. And she's got this big thing, but it's cauterized because it's blown in. So it's the only thing that isn't actually covered in blood is this wound here. And so this is the BBC. They say everyone runs in case they're, sued. Eventually a special effects man comes up with a J-cloth and goes, are you all right? Are you all right? So they call the person, the first aider who's on call. It turns out it's the security man from the desk. And this poor guy, and he's got his uniform and he's got a little first aid bag, and he comes along and he takes one look at Lulu and goes a bit faint because she's covered in blood. I mean, like shot to death, and she's just holding out her arm to him. So he dabs it with a bit of cotton wool. And eventually, I mean, she is absolutely brilliant about it. She doesn't, sue. Thank God. And she just, John Plowman then just takes her to A&E. Covered in blood.
And then she comes back for more.
Yeah, she always comes back for more. Lulu.
No matter how far you kick her, she'll always come back.
Oh, no, she's an incredible person and a terrific singer. And sport. Great sport.
And you created these amazing sketches, which is the kind of the whole thing of you and Dawn on either side the front door, and I'm your comedy partner. And
yeah.
I mean, were those all properly scripted, or did you sort of change those as you were going along?
Sometimes we changed them a bit. The White Room happened because we wanted to be at home, because we used to love how Morecambe and Wise could be at home, and no one questioned their relationship. And we thought, it's just nice to have a sort of relationship where you're at home, and you don't quite know what the relationship is. But we couldn't agree on the furniture, so it literally ended up as a white room with a sofa covered in plastic and a mantelpiece, and that was it.
And a lot of comedy, kind of, we talked about Morecambe and Wise, a lot of kind of comedy double acts in the past would have a kind of very much a sort of, the straight man, the straight one, the funny one. But you've kind of successfully, I think, kind of worked it out so you both kind of are in the limelight throughout, in a sense. It's never a feeling that one of you is eclipsing the other, or that kind of that formula is being adhered to.
It's probably why we're still friends, I imagine. It's just how we started out, really, because when we first started at the comic strip, we didn't have a double act persona, and we didn't even have a name. We were just, it was Alexi that called us eventually French and Saunders, because we kept saying, oh, we must have a name, must have a double act name, must have a double act name. Kitchen tiles, spud and potato, or something, and it was always had an in the middle of it. And eventually he got so fed up, he just said French and Saunders, and that's what stuck. But we didn't have a double act persona, so we didn't come on and go, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. We just literally came on, did some sketches, and then to show that the sketch had ended, we just stand with our feet together and bow. Like that, or clap. Thank you, like that. So eventually we realised that we needed something to let people know that it was over better, and that we had a relationship.
And I know that we touched on the fact about in terms of gender representation within comedy, and I think there probably was a lot of hope at this time because there was your show and there had been Girls on Top, but it wasn't really as if the doors were suddenly wide open and lots of female acts kind of came through.
No, I don't think they did. We were successful in that, weren't we?
Yeah, we were. You did very well.
No, I mean, I don't know why. There was us and there was Vic Wood, and there were some other comedians on the circuit, Jenny Eclair, Jenny Lecote, but there weren't, no, there weren't actually, were there? No.
And as the show...
And Tracy, of course, Tracy Ullman.
And she went off to America, didn't she,
yeah.
did her show that?
Yeah.
I mean, the other thing, I guess, is that...
Which is extraordinary, because in America, they're much better at that. Like in America, there was a time when there was Roseanne, there was Ellen, there was Sybil, there was all the main big comedy shows were following on in the tradition of Lucille Ball, so that they were headlining their own shows.
And now, in 2018, how are you feeling about that situation now?
I have grandchildren, and I sort of think it's better than it was, and I think there are chances. I still do think there's a lot of funny women out there that would be on telly if they were boys. I think, and we were talking about this the other day actually with Sally Phillips, is that I think women have a harder time being weird and being surreal. Phoebe Waller-Bridge has slightly broken down that a bit, but not
maybe
in
Julia Davis, I guess.
Maybe Julia Davis, yes, but I think she's not on the main channel, and it is harder for her to get her shows on.
Yep.
Whereas I think if she was a boy, they would be much bigger.
And and as the shows continue to be commissioned and the budgets seem to increase, certainly in terms of the kind of quality of the kind of guests that you're bringing in. Yeah, your show.
Oh, yeah.
And in terms of both the film spoofs and the guests. I mean, one thing that became a bit of a gag running throughout was Madonna and wanting. I mean, did you actually invite Madonna to be on the show at any point?
Always.
And
we wouldn't start writing the show until she'd been invited. And
did you get
embarrassing. Into the, Dawn would eventually go, no, I'm not starting writing until I know that she's been invited. I don't think we ever even got a response. Maybe, because I think we were put in touch with someone who claimed to be her PR, but I don't think I think she just put the letter in her pocket and that was it.
And if you were to bump into her in a swanky party somewhere, would you kind of have it out with her?
No, I'd be terrified. I'd be absolutely terrified. Have you seen the muscles on that woman? No, I mean, the thing was, we always knew she'd turn us down, so the joy was getting the refusal. And I think we'd probably have turned her down if she'd said yes, because we wouldn't have known what to do.
And one thing, obviously, that's really sort of fascinating from a sort of BFI perspective is the film spoofs, which became more elaborate, and I mean, the money that must be spent must have been considerable. But they also completely work, not just in terms of the gags, but visually they work really well.
Well, the genius was Bob Spears, because Bob Spears directed a lot of our early stuff, and he was an absolute stickler. He would have a monitor with the actual film, so he could get the shots and the lighting right. It's harder now because we've changed to digital, so not everything is done on film, and it's much harder to get that quality. But he was an absolute stickler for that. You see, the thing about this film spoofs is they were always an extension of the White Room, so it was still us. We weren't we looked like the people in it, but it was an imitation of the film. It was still our act.
And was this a reflection of your kind of film taste as well? I mean, did you have a very generic film taste? Because you cover everything from like sort of Bergman through to Star Wars through to, you know, Gosford Park or...
No, we covered anything we thought a lot of people would have watched. Fellini was a bit harder, but then you don't have to watch Fellini to know what it might look like, and that was what our sort of thought was. And Bergman, you have an idea that it's sort of miserable and weird and black and white, and Fellini is happy and weird and in bright colour.
And I mean, I remember like the Star Test and stuff like that, where, I mean, we had the Goss twins on this very stage during the London Film Festival with their Bros documentary, and it's uncanny.
Is there one?
Yeah, there's a Bros doc, which is which is, you know, astonishing actually. It's kind of a bit spinal tappy, but not scripted that way, if you know what I mean. We might need to edit that now.
Okay.
But they were both here. It was like a massive hen party in this room.
Gosh.
I mean, it was uncanny, actually, you know, the way, I mean, who would have thought that the two of you could have been the Goss twins, or you could have, some of the people that you, I mean, when you wrote it down on paper, did you just think, oh, that would be funny, let's see what
ridiculous,
we can do?
Yes. Well, no, because we had, I mean, extraordinary prosthetics, but I don't think we ever thought we couldn't really do anything. I mean, it's actually is just literally an impression, and the quality of the parody is a lot of the visual, really.
And it must be a real pleasure in terms of bringing back some of those kind of childhood heroes, like kind of Bernie Clifton or the Crankies, or, you know.
Always big fans.
I mean, when you just kind of writing the script.
Crankies, yeah. Come on.
And they had a good few episodes out of you, didn't they, the Crankies?
Yes, well, yes. And Jeanette was in Ab Fab.
Yeah. Talking of which.
As was Lulu.
Talking
obviously.
Of which. So Ab Fab started off as a sketch on the French and Saunders show.
Yeah.
And as I understand it, obviously, you know, you were there. There was space booked in a studio for a run of shows that Dawn wasn't going to be able to make.
I think that was
right?
what happened. Yes, I just remember knowing that Dawn wasn't available, and
you were given this opportunity.
I had to write something, which was quite intimidating because I'm quite lazy, and I think I was sort of told that I really had to buckle down and do something. And this was the only character I could think because I'd written mostly her voice. I'd done 10 minutes of it, and so I worked out I only had to do that twice again, and that was 30 minutes, therefore that could be an episode, a pilot. And it just started like that, really.
So when you make a show like Absolutely Fabulous and you're starring in it and you're writing in it, does that mean then you're kind of, I mean, were you fully involved in terms of like casting and all that sort of stuff? Because it's very much your vision, isn't it?
Yeah, no, yes.
And
editing, yeah.
And Joanna Lumley had been on the Ruby Wax show not that long before this, where she was kind of sending herself up. And is that's where this idea of Joanna came from?
That's where the idea of Joanna came from. Originally, I wrote Patsy as a sort of journalist, a low-life journalist, a sort of gutter press.
And if you were casting that kind of role, you know, what kind of person would you imagine might have been in that role?
Not Joanna Lumley. It's just like, well, I mean, we did, you know, send it out to some people, and then we didn't get. Well, I can't say honestly. I can't.
Just between us.
I can't. But then someone, in fact, it was Ruby, I think, said, "Well, what about Joanna Lumley?" Because I'd seen her on Ruby's show, and she was so funny. She was just did such great slapstick and took the piss out of herself and was so self-deprecating. I thought, well, let's try it. And she brought all the Patsy stuff with her. I mean, she brought Patsy. She brought the modelling, the hair, everything. I mean, just...
So did you audition her for the role?
Audition is a strong word. I would say I read with her. On a couple of shows, a bit like this, actually, and we did a scene together. And I thought she was amazing.
And was it clear that she absolutely was the right person? She really wanted it.
She didn't think so, but I did. And I think she took a little bit of persuading.
And then, obviously, June Whitfield, I know you were a Terry and June fan as a youngster.
Yeah.
You've got the amazing June Whitfield with you. And I mean, that means it's an incredible cast, actually, isn't it?
Well, I'd always loved June because I thought she was always slightly hard done by in everything she'd done on TV, in that she's so funny. On radio, she's sublime. I mean, always funny. You know, the stuff she'd done with Roy Hudd, and I thought she was so funny. But on TV, she always played second fiddle to Terry Scott or to someone else, and just fed lines and sort of had to put up with their bad moods and tempers, it seemed to me. And I thought that she deserved a really funny part.
And then Jane Horrocks is somebody who was very well known for theatre at that point, but really kind of broke through on this as well.
We got Jane in to read for the daughter, for Safi. And I can't remember I think it was her accent that... but of course, she read Safi beautifully. But I just thought she wasn't quite right for Safi, but would be perfect for a role I'd written for a posh girl. So we just swapped posh girl for idiot, and and it sort of worked.
and once you kind of know those people, you know what their kind of their kind of strengths are. As a writer, then presumably that makes it a little bit easier to say.
Yeah, you just write. You hear them read, and you just write what you can hear them being funny. Doing. So the second Joanna and I started talking, and she told me all about the 60s and the modelling and all that stuff. She just sort of gave so many ideas and sort of wrote the part, really.
And you talk about the fact in the past that deadlines are not always your friend, shall we say.
No.
But when you're writing a show like this and you've got all those people's availability, they have to be kind of booked out in advance and stuff.
Oh, come. Yeah, there'll be some cameras. There'll be a set.
But you did pretty well then to actually kind of get them made at all in that respect.
Yeah, I mean, I do have trouble. I need a deadline to write it or to get it near. And but I do really like rehearsing, and I really like working on a script when the people are there, because I think, what's the point in spending all those hours writing the whole thing out if you're just going to change it? So it was pretty poor sometimes, I have to say. There was a time I used to travel to London on the train from Devon for a read-through, writing on the train, and then forgetting, of course, the battery's going to go on your computer. Because I'd have said to them, it's coming, I'll get there early, you can have the computer and print it out. There was one
just
time
lose it?
when, well, I wouldn't lose it, I just wouldn't have any battery to write it. So it was, I had 3 hours. I thought I could finish it off, and I would literally walk in going, there's been something awful, I think I've lost it on my computer. This bloody technology, honestly. Why can't we go back to pencil and paper? But there were quite a few times when it was pretty ghastly, actually. I wouldn't actually recommend it. But as far as the fact that if you do leave it to the last minute, everyone needs to know what the set is, who the actors are, how long it's going to be. That's what I think. And what you're going to need. Everything else is up for grabs.
And you could write a book about writing, couldn't you?
Oh, God.
It will all come.
Oh, I just find writing so painful.
And
so painful.
And the thing, I mean, even though people loved the show in the UK and it did really, really well, nobody, I think, could have predicted quite what a kind of global phenomenon it was going to become. And it really, I mean, in terms of the US and even the international versions and everything, I mean, it's been a massive hit, hasn't it?
Well, I mean, as far as the US goes, I think I have to really thank the gay community in America, because in New York it was immense, and they gave it such support when it went over on Comedy Central. Because when they first were going to buy it in America, they wanted to subtitle it because they didn't think people would understand what was going on. And we managed to persuade them not to do that. And it was just sort of picked up by the gay community in New York and in LA. And that gave it a sort of basis to go on and... You
and Joanna won a very sort of prestigious award that the Senate gave out, the sort of LGBTQT award, very serious award, which you, for the first time, decided to go in
we didn't know it was a serious award at the time.
But usually,
No,
is it right that you would normally go along to award ceremonies such as yourself and be very somber, and for the one that was incredibly serious, you decided to go in character?
I know, mad. We thought they deserved it.
But they must have. Did they not love that?
Well, it wasn't the audience you'd have imagined. It was a very serious, issue-led. It was hideous. Honestly, it was hideous. And it was in the big Senate building, and we'd gone, honestly, draped in American flags and badges, and Patsy had her hair up. We got drunk on the plane. I said, do you think I should write a speech? She went, darling, don't bother. Just get up there and say, cheers, thanks a lot. Steward, could we have another bottle, please?
And were they expecting?
Because the great thing about Ab Fab is that if you go on an aeroplane, they give you a lot of champagne. It's compulsory. And we did just have a glass, and she said, darling, you'll be fine, you'll be fine. She didn't ever volunteer that she might do a speech. It was all on me.
And were they expecting a proper serious speech?
Of course they were. Of course they were. They got Whoopi bloody Goldberg to come and present it. It was so serious. I honestly, you have no idea. That everyone was dressed in brown. We thought it'd be a great, happy, rainbow-led gay crowd, you know, and it just really wasn't. And someone sang a song about someone that had died.
Oh God!
So honestly, at which point I just got the elbow from Joanna going, you should have written a speech. Could have killed her. Could have killed her. You know, by the time the first transgender senator had done her long speech and been applauded and people had wiped away tears, it was our turn, and it was hideous. It was hideous. Luckily, straight after, we were taken to a gay club for a Safi lookalike contest. Yes! Finally!
So, sometimes when, you know, people have such a kind of a major moment in their career that is so kind of overwhelming in a way, there's a kind of worry sometimes that it's going to kind of maybe overcast your other work. And I mean, do you ever worry about kind of revisiting because of that, or are you happy to, you know, because the audience is always there, isn't there? I mean, you could. I mean, it's something that if you had a film.
You're worried that I'm worrying that it's too successful?
Well, sometimes you get people who kind of almost feel like if they've done something.
My more serious work. My more serious work has suffered. It has to be said.
Well, all right, let's move on to Jam in Jerusalem, shall we?
Oh yes, no, actually, you're probably right. That did suffer a bit, I think, from people expecting it to be another Ab Fab. Yeah.
And that was a show that ran really well for 3 seasons, and it probably could have kept going as well.
Yes, we had plans.
And without wanting to bring you to that dark place, I mean, was that just a straightforward commission thing? No, we just don't have, you know, was it just a no? Or
it fell between. It's another weird thing in departments is it drama, is it comedy, and it sort of fell between the two departments.
It's so weird though. I mean, I think about Inside Number 9 has exactly the same thing.
Honestly,
you know?
I was so sad.
And I just find it so strange.
We had such plans for it.
But can't you? I mean, can't you just kind of blackmail them and say, look, I'll
Sometimes
give you an Ab Fab movie if you do
talk
this.
to each other as the characters, and it's.
But isn't there a sort of, you know, I mean, because the value of Ab Fab is so high to the BBC, could you just kind of say, well, look, you know, we'll do this if you do that, and kind of blackmail them a bit?
No, it doesn't work like that. No, they seem to have the power. The balance is with them.
I mean, in terms of comic timing, it doesn't get any better than that, does it?
Oh, I love that show. I love doing that show.
And it was a really great show in terms of...
We would do it for free. If there's anyone from the BBC, we would do it for free. It was such good fun.
Weird, I wasn't going to ask you to do it for free, but in this kind of age, we've got Netflix and Sky. I mean, there's so many other possibilities. Is that something actually you could just repitch and do it again, do you think?
How long ago was it? How old are we all now?
I don't know. It was 2006 to 2009, so it's not that long
10
ago.
years now, we could probably make it.
But seriously, I mean, is that
necessary?
not something you could just... I mean, is that wedded to the BBC in terms of the rights and so forth? Could you just go to...
Look at my age, I have no idea.
But is that... Because I mean, they're all here. There's a great cast.
I know, it was such a good cast. It was... Oh, I just loved it. David Mitchell was superb in it.
So maybe that might happen?
Yeah, well, yes. Gosh, I wonder who'd write that.
In terms of you know, your work with Dawn, and you came back and did a couple of Christmas specials quite recently, and you've had a sort of farewell tour, so to speak. I mean, is it really farewell, or is it one of those sort of the door's always slightly open should you want it to be?
Oh, it's always slightly open.
It's a farewell
it's
tour
just
that keeps
she
on
lives
giving.
in Cornwall. And no, I think as far as touring goes, that was
is done, is it?
definitely, yeah, no, I think that was, 10 years ago now.
There's a lovely story when you went and were part of the Absolutely Fabulous movie in France, the French version, and then you kind of had to go over there for the day and stuff. Which I don't really like to do the thing where just tell us that anecdote, but actually you had to kind of get back for the stage show, and you went and had this incredible 24 hours working with Catherine Deneuve and.
That we sold the rights for some episodes to France, and they made a film called Absolument Fabuleux, with some actually terrific actors in it. And Jean-Paul Gaultier did the costumes and put on this big fashion show for them. And they said, will you come over and just sit in the audience of the fashion show? And I said, well, of course, I'd be charmed. And I said, but look, I'm on stage that night in Oxford Apollo or something like that, and doing a tour with Dawn. But so I'd literally have to be flown over that night, come back the next day to do another theatre show. And they said, that's no problem at all. We'll send you a private jet. And so it was extraordinary. We flew in a jet over to Paris and went on to the set, and then the director came up and I went, listen. My brain is all gone, so don't give me any lines. I said, no lines at all. We just want you to sit there. Just sit there, no lines at all. We want you to sit there next to Catherine Deneuve. And I went, okay. Okay. Yes, I'll just sit there next to Catherine Deneuve. And they went off, and about half an hour later, they came back and they went, there's just a little thing. I said, no, please, no lines. So, oh, would you just say a little line, to Catherine Deneuve? And I went, oh, no. I said, okay, a little line. And they went away again. They came back and they presented the line, and it was in French. And I said, oh, and it wasn't little. It was like a long sentence.
Like three sentences.
It was like, yeah. And she replied to me, and I went, and so I sat for like an hour trying to learn this bloody thing, and then went out and met the great Catherine Deneuve, which was quite intimidating. But she was marvellous and spoke wonderful English. Why couldn't we have spoken English? She speaks wonderful English. And we were sitting there, and I was about to say the line, and she looked at me and she went, Abazula? And I literally went, Abazula, Fabuleux. It was honestly one of the most buttock-clenching moments of my life. And I think they actually cut it out. Yes, I've been cut out of a lot of French films. I did a whole French film in French, cut out. No, dubbed, yes. And I actually learned French for it. And they still dubbed me.
That's shocking, isn't it?
And it's absolutely shocking.
Well, you didn't have that thing where, I mean, you hear of actors here, I know some, who have turned up for their premiere, literally only to be told by the director and their reaction, I'm really sorry you've been cut out. I mean, it wasn't quite as bad as that.
No, they never invited me to the premiere.
Yeah.
That's how I knew. Oh, proud of. I don't know, the one that still makes me laugh, one sort of subject that still makes me laugh more than any, is Dawn talking about the giant. And I just love it because it comes from nowhere, and it's normally in the White Room. And Dawn has a wonderful, surreal mind, and she just one day just started talking about, well, that'd be the giant. No, Jen, the giant. Oh, bloody giant has been come here again. and the time when she came in and she had a giant ear on her back. And that was at a time when in the news there'd been little mice, and they were growing human ears. Spare ears. You could have your own mouse with a spare ear or a nose, I don't know. And we just thought it'd be hilarious if Dawn walked in with a huge ear on her back that she was growing for the giant, obviously. So anything to do with the giant, I like. Oh, honestly, my Celine Dion, I cringe beyond belief whenever I see that. There's a few that I do cringe at. Because remember, when we started, you could do a sketch. It's different watching them back now, because when we started, you could do a sketch that was 5 or 6 minutes long. Nowadays, honestly, our concentration span is shortened and shortened. And I just think, oh, come on, move it on, edit it, you know. So nowadays, a minute and a half is long enough.
But sometimes you need to let them breathe, don't you?
You do, but people are very itchy on the old controllers.
I know, that's true.
Heart from Mr. Pastry. Well, I mean, when I was starting out, Robin Williams and Steve Martin, I think, were the two big ones, with Joan Rivers, of course. Whoopi Goldberg. I mean, I think the 80s was really strong for extraordinary stand-ups, you know, Richard Pryor. And I think, well, people like Steve Martin, really, because he incorporated a lot of characters and a lot of weirdness, too. Good.
Didn't you share a room with Robin Williams once?
We did share a dressing room with Robin Williams once at the comic strip, and he came along and he got so sweaty on stage that he needed another T-shirt to go home in, and I gave him my T-shirt.
Aww.
And he sent it back washed.
Probably just as well.
I know, but that was. I mean, at the comic strip, a lot of those comedians turned up just to try out material and stuff, and it was extraordinary. Yeah. I don't really know, but I guess it's because they didn't care, and they just did whatever they wanted to do. They were never supposed to be role models, you know. We kind of imagined people would sort of loathe them, even though we loved them. And I think as we grew to love them, people grew to love them too as characters. I don't know. Maybe it's the dressing up. Maybe it's the attitude. I think it's the attitude. Oh, I did enjoy Let Them Eat Cake. Very painful dresses. This was something that was set in the.
You didn't write
Versailles.
that, did you?
No, we didn't write that. No. I mean, Jam in Jerusalem is the one I really miss. Mirrorball was a pilot we made with the same cast as Ab Fab. But it just I just kept missing Ab Fab, so we did another Ab Fab instead.
With something like Let Them Eat Cake, where it's somebody else's script and you're kind of both brought on to act, is that more, I mean, because obviously you're so used to collaborating, was it more difficult having somebody else's script, or was it more liberating in that respect?
It was quite liberating, really, and the characters were sort of written for me and Dawn and Alison Steadman, and it was great fun to do, really good fun.
Repeat to French and Saunders.
Oh, I think there seems to be, I mean, they do a lot of stand-up at the Apollo and all that kind of thing, live comedy, but they do it as stand-up. And I just think a really great studio sitcom, you can't beat it. And it's sort of it can be broad or subtle, but I do think that we sort of miss the energy of a studio sitcom and the way it reflects life. Normal life, like Eddie and Patsy, but that's normal. No, but now, you know, reflecting what's happening now.
And one of your daughters is a performer. Well, in fact, is an actor as well, and
she's a comic. Yeah, she works with a sketch group.
And so, I mean, in terms of looking at her as the next generation of performers and so forth, do you think? I mean, what sort of stuff is she doing?
She's doing a lot of live stuff, and then she's there, very embarrassed.
Talking about it, yeah. Is she any good?
She's very good. She's in the Josh Whitcomb sitcom as well, and I mean, she does loads of stuff. Shut up.
There you
Stop
go.
talking about me. Yes, Kathy Burke is amazing.
Yeah.
And I mean, I really miss her acting, but she's so strict now about doing very little and mainly directing. And she's a brilliant director, mainly because she understands what an actor needs to sort of do it and feel happy. And she just encourages you to show off, and that's the best thing, really. And I would do more theatre.
you want? Doesn't sound like you want to do more theatre.
No,
though.
I did it. I really enjoyed doing that. I really enjoyed doing that.
Dawn's doing big panto at the Palladium. Would you do
Yes,
panto?
is that theatre?
Quite.
If that's theatre, yes, I'll do theatre.
Would you do something like that?
God, yes.
Okay, good.
Oh, my favourite spoof would be the Fellini spoof. Just because it's so weird and obscure, and I think Dawn's hilarious in it. And there's a moment where she falls backwards off a swing that I think was so funny. I just can watch that again and again on loop. I miss Patsy, but I don't play her, but I miss being with her.
I think what's lovely about that clip is the fact that you are clearly so comfortable with each other, and that relationship which we saw, in the very, very early days, all these years later, and it's still completely there. And I know that obviously when you make something like the movie, and it was 2 years ago now, almost the minute you've made something, they are all wanting to ask you, when's the next thing coming back?
Yeah.
But now there's been a 2-year gap. Is that something you can foresee yourself revisiting at some point?
Yeah, why not? I've learned not to say no to anything because you always think, an idea comes and you think, well, let's do it as a musical, let's do it on stage, let's do another film. So
all those three things are happening, aren't they?
all those three things are happening. We've just got to keep Joanna Lumley alive.
Yeah.